Alright, so we have considered single line text and what it can do. Let's talk now about multi-line text and what it can do. Multi-line text is the text you've been using to put your name on drawings. Again, it requires fewer steps to get started, which is why I started you off on this. Multi-line text is a single click to make the top left corner and a click to make the bottom right corner. And then our text will fit in a box. If you take a look, this box, here was my first click, here was my second click. All right, so I will start typing. And when I have more than will fit on one line, you see what it just did? It'll go to the next line. That's why it is called multi-line text, because it's not just one single line, it's multiple lines. Okay, so multi-line text. Multi-line text is a little bit different than single-line text. It has the ability to line wrap, and then when you're done, take a look. This is one piece of text, even though it's got a lot of words in it, right? On my sample text over here, Lorem ipsum, if you click on it, you'll see that there is a grip. This is the location, top left justified. You'll see also there's a arrow pointing to the right here. The arrow is how wide the column was when the person made the text. So they went from here to about here to define the width. If you click on that arrow, you can compress the text, and it will word wrap or line wrap to make sure that the words fall within the two spaces within the two clicks, so that you can take text and then custom fit it in between things, so it's not all over the place. You're in charge of the text is not in charge of you. There's also a grip at the bottom. I don't like this, but I'll show it to you because you want to know why it's doing what it's doing if you accidentally hit it. If you click on the bottom, you can roll it up and create columns. So here's column 1, and then it continues on to column 2. A lot of times we do this as a mistake though, so I will show you. You click on the arrow and you'll pull it down, and that will end that column nonsense. Okay, so multi-line text. Multi-line text is when you want to type a paragraph, or when you want that word wrapping feature where one word stops and the next word starts on the next line all by itself. Can't do that in single line text, right? Because if you make a second line in single line text and then decide, oh, I don't like that, I want to get rid of it, delete. Well, eggs doesn't jump up automatically, does it? But if this is multi-line text, it would. So here's our list in multi-line text. And what happens if we get rid of eggs? Well, of course, milk can go up and fill in the blank spot. That would not happen in single line text. There are also things we can do with multi-line text that are either very difficult or impossible to do with single line text. So when do you use one and when do you use the other? If you want paragraphs that have word wrapping, then you want multi-line. If you have special effects you want to add, chances are multi-line. If you have a single piece of text like your name, the date, if you want to make a list equally spaced and all lined up, then probably single line. Okay, so what are some of these special things we can do with multi-line text that are either difficult or impossible to do with single line text? So let's click on the word underline, double click. Okay, and when we double click on multi-line text, look what happens to the ribbon. The ribbon totally changes. Now these are text tools, right? And that text editor goes away if we're not working on text. So again, the ribbon is smart, right? It brings up what you need when you need it. I'm going to double click on underline, and I'm going to highlight the word underline with my cursor, and then we see that we have an underline to add something underneath a string of text to make it stand out, maybe like the title of something, right? So that's not that exciting. I mean, we have that in Microsoft Word, don't we? Underlining. How about overlining? Spell check says that's not a word. But that's okay, because AutoCAD has a feature for adding a line over a word or series of words. So you can underline or overline. You can take your text, select it, and add italics to it. At some point, maybe you want to change the instructions on a drawing, but you don't want to get rid of the original instructions, so you strike through the instructions. Now there's a line through there and people know, hey, this doesn't apply anymore. Okay, and then we have exponential notation, right? We make a superscript. So over line 2, I'm going to highlight the 2 and click on that superscript. And now we're raised to the power of 2. And sometimes we want the number small and a little bit lower, like H2O. Well, this would be a subscript. Okay, so that would be really hard to do using single line text. Multi-line text is much easier to work with, and the ribbon will change and accommodate you when you're working with multi-line text. What else can we do? Over here it says all caps, right? So these are not all caps, obviously, they're all lowercase. Well, we could do this. We could highlight this text, and we see we have an option, and the option is to change it from lowercase or mixed case to all uppercase. Now it is all capitals. And then here we could highlight all this text, and that will activate the tool, and we can go back in and say, nope, I want to make it all lowercase. So without having to retype things, which I know drives people nuts, and it's hard to remember on technical drawings, typically everything is uppercase. The only note you're ever going to see on a technical drawing in lowercase is the word, or the abbreviation for the word millimeter, mm. Okay, now you can do these different things in different parts of the drawing. So I can go in there and I can add some bold to one. I can highlight the next word and italicize it. I can go into the next one and underline it. I can go to the next couple and overline them. Right? And we can stack one thing on top of another. I can have underline and italics. We can do a strike through. We can take labore and we can superscript it, and we can take magna and we can subscript it. Right, and we can go in and change lowercase stuff to uppercase, and we could also go in there and change uppercase to all lowercase. So play around with that and get used to this idea of how multi-line text works and what some of these things on the ribbon will do for you. One of the other things that we can do is we can organize points one after another. So this is an important point, and underneath it I have all of those important points. Normally when you have a list of important points, you put a little dot in front of each of them, right, called a bullet. So check it out. We can highlight all of our important points, and we can go to the paragraph panel, and we can say, hey, bullet this list. Now check it out. Now each of these points has its own bullet because they were on separate lines. And since it moved over a little bit, you see the word points jump to the bottom line. Well, just grab the grip and then you can stretch it back out so there's enough room for the bullet and all the words. So we highlight things with bullets when we want to make the important points stand out. Sometimes we want to enumerate things, and we say point A, B, C, D, and E, right, with a little parenthesis behind it. Well, that's a real pain in the neck to have to type out longhand. So guess what? You don't have to. We can go in and you can say, hey, I want these lettered. And then when it comes to lettering, what kind of letter would you like? Would you like lowercase letters, A, B, C, D, and E? Or would you like uppercase letters, A, B, C, D, and E? Okay, so if we want to do this, again, why type it out manually when you can just select all those separate pieces of sentence in this big piece of multi-line text and then have the editor do it for you. And of course we can do the same thing with numbers. We can highlight, we can go into bullets and numbering, and we can say, hey, number these for me. And then there's our automatic numbering. One of the other things we can do with multi-line text is we can change justification for text you've already made if it's multi-line. So right now, if I highlight this text or select this text and the ribbon opens up, it'll tell me that this is top left justified. Okay. If I highlight the text though, I can say, hey, make that bottom left. And now when you click on it, do you see how the grip is down at the bottom left? So you can then move it to where you want it with the correct justification. This one here should be middle center. It's actually top left. You can see the top left grip right there. Well, why don't we go in there and why don't we say, hey, let's make that justify middle center. And now there is a grip in the middle at the center, which allows us to relocate it to where we want it and keep that justification. Down the bottom here, top center. Right now it is top left, so I'd like to change it. I'll select it. I'll say top center. I now have a grip at the top center, which allows me to position it exactly how I want it. So if you're working with multi-line text and you would like to change the justification, this is also something that we can do in the ribbon when the text editor is activated. I can say instead of top left, I want all these top center. All right, and now they're all centered on each other. Of course, the number of words in each sentence is different, so the numbering looks bad, so I'd probably not want to do that. But you could if you needed to. The last special feature about multi-line text is that you can add symbols to your drawing that are not normally found on the keyboard. For example, 45 degrees, right? There's a little symbol to represent degrees, and it's not on your keyboard. Well, if you look at your ribbon, you'll see that there is an insert panel, and you can insert a symbol. And there's degrees right there. Bam. And now we have the degree symbol as part of our drawing. Sometimes with measurements and dimensions, they give you a tolerance. How much can it be above or below the measurement you're asking for? So there's a symbol called plus minus. So I'll go to the symbols and I'll say give me plus minus, and then it adds the plus minus to that 2/100 of an inch measurement. When we're working with a circle diameter, there is a symbol for diameter, and you could draw it with a circle and a line, but it's just so much easier to have it included with the text because it's the same font. See, it's the same thickness, it looks the same instead of a circle with a line, which would look a little ghetto. There is some other symbols that are commonly found on technical drawings. For example, delta, right, is used for phase change. We use it when we're talking about coordinates. How much does a relative coordinate change? There's a symbol for center line. So we'll go to symbols and we'll insert it. Center line. Looks like a C on top of an L, right? That indicates the center of something. So some of these symbols you can easily insert into single line text if you know the special trick, but most of the time it's just easier to stick them in using multi-line text. Okay, so that takes us through our discussion on single line and multi-line text. You might have noticed when you are working with multi-line text, if you want to do a spell check, that words will underline while you're working on them if they are incorrectly spelled. See, they're not underlined when you're not working on them. They're only underlined when you're working on them. It can be a little hard to go through each piece of text to check the spelling, and because of that, there's a much easier thing to do. Just go to the command line and type in spell. And what this is a spell checker. Okay, so you can check either the entire drawing or certain objects, or you can draw a window and say select these things and check the spelling, and then say start. And what it'll do is it'll go through and it'll say, hey, I don't know this word. It'll show you where the word is. It'll give you some suggestions. Maybe you spelled it wrong. Kind of like spell check in Word, right? So you can either ignore it or change all of them. Okay, or we can do, instead of just a little part, you get to do the entire drawing. And it'll go through the whole drawing one at a time and find every one of the spelling mistakes so that you don't turn in some beautiful technical drawing with tons and tons and tons of spelling errors on it, which is very embarrassing.